Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in today for episode 2 of Founders Friday. I'm here today with Laurence Watson. Laurence Watson is the co-founder and CEO of Treebeard Technologies. He is a data scientist and software engineer with 8 years of experience serving the energy domain. He's now focused on building the next generation of tools for data scientists. Treebeard Technologies was founded in 2019 and led by Laurence Watson. The team at Treebeard Technologies are working hard to build cutting-edge software to enable swift and secure data exchange between companies and data scientists. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Laurence?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, no, great to talk. So I've been a data scientist for a long time. My co-founder Alex is a software engineer. Previously at Amazon and Microsoft, and more recently in Probable, where he was part of the modeling team. And there, as a software engineer, he did a lot of the back-end infrastructure and data engineering. And once he put in these processes around testing and continuous integration, his team of data scientists were extremely pleased about it. And that sort of led us to this idea that, there's a lot of back-end infrastructure that is difficult for data scientists to set up, but really makes a big impact on the way that you can work. And we believe that existing tools are just lacking and haven't really caught up for data science workflows where they have been for software engineering. And so we think we can sort of lower the bar and make it easier for data scientists to access those kinds of tools. And that will speed up the process, will help them to work faster, will help them to reduce errors and to do more reproducible work faster. So that was the sort of founding vision to what we're doing.
Great, yeah, it sounds like you're really adding a lot of value to the data science community and helping them solve some really key problems. So would you like to just tell us a little bit more about the story of the company, like what led you to start the company and how did that come about?
Yeah, for sure. As you said, I've been mostly working around the sort of energy and climate change space for a lot of non-profits in my career for about 8 or 9 years. And I was always doing analysis and writing policy papers and doing bits of sort of data science work. But I was never sort of making or producing anything myself apart from reports and recommendations. And so I always thought one day I would try and roll up my sleeves and try and make something to move the needle for people. Alex and I actually met on the Entrepreneur First accelerator, along with, there are 100 other people on this cohort, and we're all swirled together. And we joined up pretty early on in that program because we felt we were quite aligned on the vision we had for the sort of work we wanted to do. And we've been doing that for about 7 months now.
Oh, great! Yeah. So, did you know Alex kind of before you started this journey, or you met him for the first time at that event?
Yeah, exactly. On that program, we met, and I mean, it's very useful to be on an accelerator with a lot of people of a similar mindset because, you really want people who are committed and ready to give, all of their time towards an idea. And we were both at that. We were both at that point, so that was super useful.
Yeah, that's good. Good to have a co-founder who's just as committed to the journey as you are, for sure. So, have you encountered much competition in your, in your area, and how do you sort of differentiate yourself from that competition?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, it's on us to sort of make ourselves aware of the tools that people are using in the space. And I mean, I'd say in terms of like data science and AI at the moment, there's a couple of big trends. One is about like a sort of fully hosted cloud solution. So like, all of the big like Amazon, Google, Microsoft all have sort of big hosted cloud solutions for AI for working with notebooks, which we focus on. And the benefits obviously of going to a sort of all-in-one provider are that, they provide each piece of the puzzle and you can sort of do everything you want with them. On the other hand, perhaps if their offering can't fit in with something that you want to do specifically, it might be quite difficult, that you perhaps lose a bit of flexibility. And also there's a lot of upfront cost to get set up. It can also be designed for a pretty hardcore, for large organizations, or if you're a small organization, you might not want to spend time spending all the time getting set up. And at the other end, there are sort of more specific hosted AI solutions that are just very focused on giving you a particular service. What we wanted to do that was slightly different is to sort of take some of the tools and go to people in terms of how they already work. And that means working with Git. We think, version control is obviously really essential for data science. And so like going and working from people's repositories, and that means integrating with GitHub, and really plugging into people's work, allowing people to bring their own integration, so to integrate with whatever cloud service they happen to be using, whatever sort of frameworks they happen to be using. And the way we do that is, so just to very quickly say what the service does, it
Sure.
for a Python project, a data science project with notebooks in, we have a service that automatically builds a container, a cloud container that from the project environment, so you don't have to create your own Docker files and things like that. And then it'll just try and execute all of the notebooks, all of the code, all of the research. It'll just try and execute all of the notebooks and tell you if it's been successful or not. And then it'll publish the outputs. But you can use secrets to authorize and to call in, make any kind of external calls to other sorts of services or other compute as you go. So we wanted to make it extendable in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
So we do feel like we're doing it slightly differently. Basically, we're different to sort of existing CI providers. We're different to cloud providers, but it's sort of, in startup stuff, you never want to focus too much on the competition either. You also just
absolutely
have to think
about, yeah, definitely about
know.
making your product as good as possible.
So on that, I've just spent a lot of time talking to data scientists, talking to researchers in teams, and just trying to understand how people work and what the pain points are. And I probably spend much more time on that than thinking too much about all of the other offerings.
Yeah, sure. Have you had to come over any major hurdles or overcome any big challenges in the startup journey so far? And if so, how did you do that?
And, when myself and my co-founder started, so my background, as I said, was more in energy and climate. So I had quite a strong desire to do something around clean tech and clean energy. And there's some super cool clean tech startups, and bringing in AI and better forecasting, and especially with more renewables on the grid, there's all these challenges. And we went through about 5 different ideas, trying to sort of validate a market demand for various ideas that we come up with and various problems. And we found it super tough. And that was very dispiriting, because we sort of lost some confidence in our own abilities and said, maybe we're not cut out for this, and all of that kind of thought, which was difficult for sure. It was difficult mentally. And once we then sort of pivoted into the data science space, and we realized we were really well set up from our backgrounds and we were really interested in it, we found that we just got a lot more traction straight away. It was easier to start talking to the right people, to think about a solution that people wanted. And so that was a turning point. And I guess the main advice to anyone else is just just don't give up, and just grit your teeth, and just keep going, and keep thinking, and keep being creative, and do whatever you have to do to switch it up and try new things. But
absolutely,
definitely been some tough times.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's all about that determination and having perseverance to just carry on going after those goals and ambitions.
And I know that determination is your most. You've got the most
yes,
stats on LinkedIn for determination, which is pretty awesome.
Well, yeah, I thought that's you can't really argue with someone if you're trying to put your faith in someone. You want to go for the person who's the most determined, because they're the one that's gonna never give up. So yeah, that's really important to have that if you're starting a company. So what are some of the goals and ambitions for your company? Where would you be aiming for in the next few years?
Yeah, well, in the next few years, we want to. I would love for us to be seen like the tools that we're developing in terms of testing and continuous integration and working and serving notebooks, which we think have a really important growing part to play in the data science ecosystem. I'd love it if we were seen as being a part of best practice, that just like you would say to someone, well, you should use version control, and you should use Git, and you should use GitHub because of the benefits you get from versioning everything. I would want people to say, well, you should use Treebeard because you get all of these benefits, and it's just the right way to do things. And so, of course, having being used by large organizations and having hundreds of thousands of users, that would be great. You know, obviously, of course, that's my ambition, and I think given the huge growth in data science, there's no reason why we shouldn't be being used by a huge amount of people.
Sure, yeah, I'm
so
sure
that motivates me.
Yeah.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, well, that's a really good good ambition. So, given the current situation with the whole COVID-19 and everything that's going on right now, has that had an impact on your business and your day-to-day life? I'm sure it has. So how have you reacted to that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're a small team, small organization, and a lot of the, you know, communication we do with people is remote anyway. So in a sense, it, you know, it hasn't affected us nearly as much as a lot of other businesses, a lot of other organizations. I mean, I think the only impact really is that we would have gone to quite a few events and speaking events and given talks and things, and we haven't been able to go to those physical events. But everything apart from that, it's very easy for us to develop the product remotely and to reach out to people remotely. So I must say we're very fortunate that it hasn't really affected us.
Yeah,
and also, I mean, I know for, you know, a lot of my friends doing startups and trying to raising money and things, and obviously it's now a much more difficult time due to the sort of state of the economy and recession and so forth. And so that's led to sort of VC belt tightening, and so I'm sure your viewers will know much more about. And yeah, that does make it a difficult time. And I mean, our response to that is just to build our own confidence in terms of traction, in terms of our user base, in terms of iterating on the feedback that we have and showing that we really have solid commercial underpinning. And that's what we're sort of resting on, you know, rather than just trying to raise money on the promise of sort of future trajectories. We want to sort of have stuff be a bit more tangible first.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, using the time that you have in lockdown, is there any sort of things that you've been doing in lockdown to try and use this time to really prepare yourself and be 100% ready to get back out there and try and, you know, raise funding as best possible once all of this is over?
We are at the moment just in a cycle of just talking to our users, taking their feedback and just trying to make sure they're getting as much value as possible. So we're letting people in and sort of very slowly and sort of bringing in teams for trials. But we don't want to sort of, but that's the iteration loop we're in at the moment, is just about really trying to make sure we're hitting value on the people that are using the platform. And then when we feel like we've got to an acceptable milestone there, we will then try and grow. And of course, you know, growing comes with a sort of hosted solution. There's all this scaling and things like that to think of. So we just want to make sure we're at the right point.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, being part of a startup is all about innovation. It's all about finding new solutions to problems and coming up with new business models and stuff like that. So is there any approach that you take to encourage innovation in your company and in your teams to try and get people to really think outside the box and be creative with their ideas?
Yeah, we do try and, I mean, we try and have semi-regular sessions in terms of ideation, in terms of coming up with new feature ideas, in terms of thinking about, I guess we draw a distinction between sometimes, more rarely, maybe once a month, we'll have a sort of fun session where we'll just say any old crazy thing and write them all down and think, you know, are any of these feasible, or are they just like really wacky and fun product ideas?
Yeah.
And then more frequently than that, we'll do a sort of what's best bang for our buck, and we'll sort of list all of the features that we think might move the needle, and then we'll write down the impact we think that they would have on people, or what people have told us they would have, and then we'd write down how long it would take us to actually implement them. And then we just rank them all and say, okay, what's the best bang for our buck here? And then that'll be the next product sprint.
Yeah, definitely.
And then in other ways, in terms of being creative, is just reading. I mean, we try and read. We try and listen to podcasts and things. We love hearing stories of other innovators and startup people, and that just keeps the ideas coming.
Yeah, I agree completely. You know, listening to podcasts, reading, just adopting a mindset of just lifelong learning. That's really key, especially in this day and age, where it's really just very important to carry on absorbing information and staying up to date with the latest industry trends. Is there any other ways that you stay up to date with the latest AI trends or the latest research of AI?
I mean, honestly, I quite like Twitter for that. And then, I mean, and then of course there's the sort of ML conferences and things now that everything has gone online.
Gone digital,
Like
yeah.
iClear, yeah. There's a lot of there's a lot of YouTube videos for conference presentations and papers, and I think that makes it a lot more accessible. You can just skim, all of the sessions and just dip into a couple on YouTube and just sort of try and find the best bits. But I look to sort of industry figureheads on Twitter, and I just see what they share and try and get a sense of, try to keep on top of it from that.
Yeah, definitely. It's really important to have those key people who are leading the way and keep up to date with the sort of stuff that they're putting out. Is there anyone in particular that you would see as, one of your biggest inspirations, or someone that's really helped you along your journey so far?
Who do I like? I mean, there's lots of, I've been following Francois Chollet, the Keras creator, recently. Seems to come up quite a lot in my timeline. There's a great data science newsletter called Data Elixir by Lon Riesberg that I think is really solid. Matt Clifford, who is a co-founder of Entrepreneur First, has a great blog which is partly about VC, partly about tech, but also it has a lot of sort of political and technology themes. So it's quite a broad read, but I count that one as more of a luxury. That's more of a treat one rather than chock full of sort of technical stuff. But he's a very good writer.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking at people like Lex Friedman. He's really, really good. And yeah, I think LinkedIn is one of the best platforms as well, just for there's a lot of new content creators coming online on LinkedIn, putting out some really good stuff. So I think that's a really great way to learn.
I've just started signing up to newsletters on LinkedIn, which I didn't realize were a thing before. I think I've signed up to 2 people's LinkedIn newsletters.
They're really good. I've signed up to a couple of them as well.
And Lex Friedman, for sure. I really enjoyed his podcast with David Silver of AlphaGo, and
I need to
that
watch
talked
that.
about. I really recommend it because I didn't realize that. I mean, David Silver talks about his background, and he did a PhD in reinforcement learning for Go, and so the idea of him doing it as a PhD and then going all the way to be leading the AlphaGo team, and then to sort of beating the world champion with
I know, that's
program
historic.
that he developed is pretty amazing. Yeah, and he's very sort of matter of fact about it all.
Yeah, absolutely. There's many great content creators for the AI community at the moment. So just going back to the sort of ways that you encourage different things within your company, and I was thinking recently about how you would approach building a good company culture when you're, from day one. How would you go about creating a culture that encourages innovation, fail fast, fail often, the Silicon Valley motto? Is there any sort of ideas that you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I mean, one, I would say, I'd caveat it by saying I'm certainly not an expert in creating good culture, and we're at an early stage, but I would say some things that are really important to us are just like honesty and feedback, and you just have to get into a culture of really being able to say what you really think and not be judged about it, and also to call people out if you think, that if you want to criticize them or praise them or whatever. And so one thing me and my co-founder regularly try and give each other feedback and say, do you have any feedback for me? Could I have done this differently? Or, what did you think of the way I handled that? And that sort of keeps us grounded, and that is a good way just to sort of check in and just to keep on the same page with things. Yeah, but it's hard, and especially when there's a lot of stuff to do all the time and you're often sort of quite stretched. It's difficult to sort of make sure you're putting in the right stuff. I think sort of writing down your values and making commitment about the way you want to do things, so that you're accountable in future, so you can look back and say, oh, did we actually act in the way that we said we were going to? And so making commitments is good.
Yeah, that's all really, really good points, and definitely about setting out key values and making sure that you hold yourself accountable to that is very important. So that's all really, really valuable information. Is there any sort of advice that you would have for some young data scientists or software developers just starting out, and they might be interested in working for different startups? What sort of advice would you give someone like that?
Yeah, I would say it's a tough one because there's so many questions in terms of when you're starting out, like what you want to do, and you're sort of missing so much of the context, you know, about the differences between a more corporate company, a late stage startup, an early stage startup. You don't really know what you're getting into, and you know, there's only one way to find out, which is the hard way. But I would just encourage people in general to think about what they enjoy and what their values are, and what they you know, what they think is important in the world, and then to let that guide them, and then to generally sort of have the belief that whether you're a software engineer or data scientist, or, you know, there's a lot of roles that you could fill into, but just there's probably a company out there that fits your values and your sense of purpose and your mission really, really well, that needs your skill set. So don't be sort of put off by saying, oh, you know, I can't find the right sort of job. Think more about what organizations you would like to work for, and then, you know, go and seek them out and then try and get into them that way. Because it just, you know, at the end of the day, and especially with startups, like being mission aligned and finding the right culture and the right sort of, that's what's going to motivate you, and that's what's going to ultimately mean that you know, when you look back, you don't regret anything, that you're really happy that you were in that environment and doing the work that you were proud of.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's so important to go with a company that's aligned with your values, that has a purpose that you believe in, something that you can get behind, and just have meaning to work rather than just, you know, going for a well-paid job at the unethical corporation that you don't agree with. It's really key for your own personal satisfaction to go with a company that's supporting stuff that you believe in. So if you were to kind of say that, would you say that there's like one big impact that you would like to have on the world, something that you would like to leave behind to just like have as your legacy or something like that? Big question, I know.
Yeah, I don't. No, look, I don't know really. I mean, you know, it will be. I mean, overarching for my lifetime. I mean, I hope, you know, some of the work I've done previously and the work I'm doing now can contribute to the world dealing with the issue of climate change, and our like global response, individual response, country level responses need to accelerate drastically from where we are. And part of that is about like data and science and research and innovation and teams. And so I hope what we're doing with Treebeard will be able to help serious challenges in terms of helping researchers and academics, technical teams, data science teams, you know, work faster, innovate faster, in a really robust way. So yeah, you know, I think if we can build a product that really delivers value for people, then that's something that I'll be incredibly proud of.
There's no greater ambition than to try and, you know, solve the climate crisis and some of the problems that we're facing in the world. And this is the best time to be doing that. It's the crucial time. So that's a very respectable ambition. I can really get behind that. Is there any kind of big trends that you see coming in the AI space, or any big milestones in AI research that you're particularly excited about?
I mean, the AI stuff that I've been a bit closer to has been around geospatial analysis and deep learning for things like identifying energy infrastructure, especially from sort of satellite imagery, real-time monitoring of energy infrastructure. And yeah, like a lot of these things are, I mean, a lot of the stuff is using off-the-shelf or like relatively off-the-shelf sort of image processing networks. But it's really more about the availability of data and how these things are sort of linked up. But the amount of, and the quality of sort of open source frameworks in order to like very quickly set up a geospatial ML pipeline is pretty impressive. So again, I would see that as sort of like lowering the bar to entry in terms of being able to access massive data sets. I mean, the work that like Amazon and Google have done as well in terms of like making data sets available really easily. Like you just connect an S3 bucket, and that's been connected up to like the European Copernicus satellite data program as well. So it goes straight into an S3 bucket. You can put that straight into your pipeline and, you know, start doing semantic segmentation super quickly. So that sort of thing, the sort of velocity that it's given small teams is pretty remarkable.
Definitely.
And things like as well, you know, we get to more like the sort of wildfire detection that people have been doing, things like the big dam disaster. Now you can sort of create automated inventories of you know, of hazards, of waste streams, of infrastructure, and monitor them in near real time. Like that I think is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I agree. That's really exciting. All of these things are really helping solve the big problems. Wildfires are really something that's a pressing matter. There needs to be more innovation in that kind of in finding solutions to stuff like that. So yeah, that's all really interesting. Um, so there's a lot of stigma around entrepreneurship and some of the like long hours and that sort of thing. So what would you say is a good approach for someone who's starting out as an entrepreneur to try and stay motivated and put in those hours to really execute on your goals?
Yeah, I think you have to. This goes back to values, right? I mean, like it definitely requires a lot of effort and a lot of determination over a long period, and you know, with very unclear results, or you know, the potential is very unclear in terms of how it's going to end up. So it's just all the more important that you're doing something you're really committed to and really believe in, that's going to keep you going, as well as having a good team, having the right co-founder or co-founders.
Yeah,
or if
definitely.
you're just on your own, you know, you need to be able to believe in the vision completely. But I think also like we've been fortunate enough to be part of several communities with initially with Entrepreneur First, and we were a member of Google Campus, Google for Startups. We were on the NatWest for Business Accelerator as well. And all of these communities, again, you know, have like-minded people where you can share your problems, you can ask for advice, you can give advice. You know, there's all sorts of sort of useful things that those communities give you access to, and but the sense of community really helps you move forward. You know, to feel like you're part of a group of people doing the same thing. That sort of gives me a motivation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Making sure that you're part of a big community, and having those sorts of people around you, that network to encourage you and drive you forward is really valid. And making sure that the stuff that you're doing is part of what you believe in. I agree with that completely. I find it a lot easier to work on stuff when it's something that I'm passionate about. So making sure that your company is something that's aligned with your big passions is something that is going to help you a lot in that process. Yeah, I think we're going to probably finish up around about now. It's probably
Great.
getting close to the half-hour mark. So
Yep.
thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about your company and some of the things you're working on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Joe. Really good to talk to you.
No problem. I wish you the best of luck for the future coming out of the current crisis, and take care and stay safe.
Wicked. Same to you. All the best.
Thanks a
Bye
lot.
bye.